In the far north-central region of the United States is Michigan's remote Upper Peninsula, the UP, as natives know it. Geographically and culturally separated from the mainland, it is almost an island. Almost entirely forested, the UP remains a hidden semi-wilderness region with spectacular seasonal colors and harsh, seemingly endless winters. The Sturgeon River drains a vast watershed, flowing 106 miles through forests and through flatlands of Pelkki, a Finnish-American farming community. It is a spawning site for the archaic endangered sturgeon and a peculiar fish requiring the coldest possible temperatures, the burbot, our North Country's freshwater cod.
Burbot is called made or matikka. Made is actually the official name. Most of the people call matikka, but made is the proper Finnish name.
Poor man's lobster.
That's what they're called.
Finnish lobster. Good stuff.
So where shall we start with burbot? So let's start with basics about burbot. Burbot are a fish that's native to North America, and actually they're native around the globe in the northern hemisphere. They're pretty interesting because with that distribution you might expect them to occupy the ocean too, because there's all these continents that are separated, but they don't. So they're a completely freshwater fish found in all the continents around the northern hemisphere. To be quite honest with you, I think burbot are cool. They reproduce in the middle of the winter. There's not very many things thinking about reproduction in January in the UP of Michigan. And so when I moved here, I'm like, these fish are pretty awesome. So they're interesting scientific questions, and they're just interesting animals to try to understand a little bit about. So I started casting about, looking for projects, looking for a way to work on them, and I find that we really know very little about them. For us as ichthyologists, as biologists, one of the things that really makes them interesting is that they're related to cod. So they're the only freshwater member of a family that is otherwise completely seawater. Includes things like cod and pollock and hake. You have to understand, these fish are 1/8 of an inch when they hatch. And they grow really slowly because the water is so cold. So these fish are so tiny for for at least their first 6 months, maybe their first year, that if they die, you won't know it. Nobody will see it. The reason I'm sort of broadly interested in it is that this interesting thing where some of them will spawn in streams and some are in the lake. But think about what that really means. You know, if you're a tiny little 1/8 of an inch long animal, and you are born into this insane environment of wintertime, ice, flowing river, and then maybe you get swept out to the lake, and you're in the big cold Lake Superior. Can you imagine what that's like for this tiny little animal that's ultimately going to grow up to an animal like this? We can't. We have no information. We don't know who preys on them. We don't know. We know that they have a really high mortality rate. They must, because the females produce so many eggs. But we don't know when that happens. And so even saying, well, the population size is this and it's declining a little bit, you know nothing about a population until you understand how the fish that are born and are tiny get to be that population that the fishermen want to catch. So I have this bright idea eventually to recruit a graduate student to see if we could capture adult burbot that are spawning and grow fish ourselves so that we can then learn something about the early stages of this animal. And that's where Thornton came in.
Yeah, so I had never seen a burbot actually until I came to the Great Lakes. And what sort of drew me in communicating with Jill when I wanted to start to do this was this idea of not knowing anything about this fish, especially at its younger life stages. So as we sort of spoke about, this fish is quite unique, seems to have some sort of importance in the Great Lakes. So that's sort of what drew me to burbot. Specifically working with these little larval burbot. So we're talking about they hatch at about 3 millimeters in length, and I look at them up to about 13 millimeters, so quite small. So I've actually processed a lot of samples already, and we have lots of interesting data on how these fish develop and sort of, you know, how their body changes throughout this development. So now we're using our own fish that I'm rearing to add to that data set and to get this big data set from multiple populations, multiple life histories, and then we can draw comparisons between them. So within the Great Lakes, there's sort of 3 life history variations that we think about. You have your river burbot, so you have burbot that are residents in a Great Lakes tributary, so in the UP, such as the Sturgeon River, the Autrain River, the Pashiki as well. And then you have tributary spawners, which live as adults in the Great Lakes and move into the tributary to spawn like a salmon would. And then you have lake spawners who live in the lakes and spawn on shallow shoals in the lakes. And then you also have inland lakes too that also have burbot. But again, we don't know what happens to them after they hatch in all these different environments. So hopefully my research will kind of allow us to infer some of that, and then hopefully more to come in the future will help us understand this sort of early life stage, because to me it's baffling. I don't understand how a fish this small could live in the middle of the winter, you know, early spring, and live to grow to a big adult.
And in wintertime, burbot was the most coveted fish in Finland. I was 30 years old when I left from Finland, so before that, 15 years I was fishing burbot. And our farm was by a lake which was 50 miles long. So I had a fishing partner with which we took a horse and sleigh into the area where the burbot was spawning. The burbot spawning areas were well known for maybe hundreds of years already for the people where they are spawning. So we put our nets, always hoop nets, on those areas, then in the water, and caught burbot.
Contrary to what people think, they look at a burbot and they think that that fish is not very good tasting. It is absolutely unbelievable.
Some people are even so much after the burbot, they said that they will trade the trout any time to a burbot.
I'm all Finn. Both my grandparents are one's from northern Finland, one's from southern Finland. And I just assumed that was the way that's what the Finnish people ate.
They still net in Finland a lot, so they brought that tradition over here.
Food source for survival. Well, they didn't have nothing when they first moved here. It was just wilderness.
When things were homesteaded, our great grandparents, that's why they moved along the river. just to sustain life.
And a lot of people needed to have the access to the water for all kinds of things.
Right.
For their animals and
Well,
but it was easy, to
Yeah.
have the river there for fish.
Most everybody had a net.
Yeah. It was kind of a mainstay in wintertime that most of the Finns around here ate made, as we call them, made.
I remember doing it with Melvin, my dad, as a young teenager, tagging along, and it was in December. I mean, it was when they would start to run. Like usually, I always remember him saying, Christmas time was the best time.
My dad and I used to help my dad, and we used to get burbot. It wasn't easy, but we would have to shovel the snow and make a path because the deepest part where we live right now is across the river. Some days there'd be like 2 inches ice. Other days there could be 6 or 7 inches in 2 days. We never took the net out every day. We took it out every 2 days.
And when you pull that net up, you're always anticipating the fish in it,
What was going to be in it?
Yeah.
Occasionally you'd have a rainbow or a walleye.
Sometimes an otter even.
Yeah.
Some days you wouldn't get in anything at all. There were days when we had so many burbot in the net that we couldn't get the net up. So we'd have to pull the back end up first and take the fish out and throw them out on the ice so we could get the net up.
Yeah, I was a little boy with my dad and my uncle, and they told me to stay on the bank, and I was only about maybe 5, 6, something like that. And I follows them out there, and I slipped off the logs, and I went through the ice, and I was hanging on the ice. I said, Dad, he saw me sitting there, and he didn't know whether to smile or what. And he grabbed me by the cuff of the neck and threw me up on the bank, and he said, stay there, son. I was almost a goner that day.
Well, here's the one. Here's mine. Herranen aika, saatana tarvita. This is the one I made. This one here I made in 15 years ago. I'm surprised it's in such good shape. That's probably because it's in the smokehouse. I just used to put weights here. I drilled holes because you don't want this to flood up. And then I made a little door here where you open these 2 wires up and you just take it out, and that's it. No wonder it's still good.
Well, this is called hoopnet, and in Finnish it is called katiska. And this is what I have always been using for fishing burbot, both in Finland and when I moved over here. Also over here, we have been fishing burbot with this hoopnet. It's a handmade thing. There's first a lead which leads into the trap, and this is called nielu, a funnel through which funnels the fish in there. And when they get inside, they just go round and round and round and round, and they realize that they could get back in from that funnel to get out, but they stay inside over there. When you get the fish, you open up from here, the back side, and then you just shake them out like this, through this opening over here at the end. In Finland, we also used other kind of traps which were called rysä, which was it was a cloth netting which had it was enforced with the round rings to so that it stayed open. Unfortunately, then my buddy died, and then I didn't have anybody to fish, and that was 30 years ago that I quit fishing. And
I haven't done it since Rolf died. Cousin Rolf, was it 6 years ago?
Yeah.
We used to put the net in, and he passed on.
I stopped fishing probably 10 years ago.
I don't think hardly anybody does that anymore.
I still haven't been able to find anybody that could tell me how they first originally started netting the river, or why they started netting the river. And then how did they end up knowing that the burbot were drawn at a certain time. You know, years and years ago they used to make, I believe, spruce boughs for covering. This is how it's been done for years. Years and years and years. The general idea is to be on the outside curve of the river in the deepest part. The current has to flow through there the same as it would without a net in it. That sends the fish up the funnel because they think they're still in the original current. The basic run, I found out, is generally from sometime after Christmas to middle of January, third week of January, then they're basically done. Let it go all the way.
Okay. Well, years ago, though, they would come. You'd have a line of guys that would come that were up in their years already, but they knew where the people were, netting, and they would come with their pails.
I remember your dad doing it down by the gravel pit, and there was people coming from Calumet, Lake Linden, every Saturday to get some fish.
A lot of families relied on it to help them with their, to feed their families.
It fed the elderly people around here plus ourselves.
Everybody was kind of in it together.
They'd come and see how many you had, and
Right.
and then they would, maybe have somebody with them that wanted a few more, and so the sharing always happened.
Mm-hmm. They were bagged, put in a cardboard box, all sealed up, taped up, and I think the box was packed with snow. And it was, I remember bringing them to a Greyhound stop. There was one in Baraga, and putting them on the bus, and they were shipped down to the Detroit area to relatives down there. So it was like Joyce asked, were they in a cooler? I said, oh no. I mean, it was an overnight trip. I mean, it didn't take long. I mean, they were underneath the Greyhound. So, I mean, that was kind of a funny thing when you think of it now. At the time, it wasn't funny. That's what you do.
And that one old guy, remember Mullo? He used to have them in the snowbank all winter and eat them
Just throw
from
it
there.
up there to the snowbank and dig one out when he wanted.
Yeah.
I applied the permit and I got the permit to fish from Pesiki River here in UP, and we were catching lots of burbot because I don't think that anybody has really been catching them from that river before. It was we were very successful, and there were lots of old-time Finns living in the area who liked the burbot also, so we were giving them for many old-timers to make fish soup.
30, 40 years ago, these nets would be so full it'd take 4 people to lift them out.
We caught like 288 one time. They were like packed in there like sardines that time. It was unbelievable. But that was like, I don't know, 50 years ago, 40 years ago.
There was 5 of yous and you couldn't pull it
Yeah,
out.
it was just too heavy. He went and got the Wendell Niemi's
Tractor.
and he
pulled it out.
pulled it out with that. They wouldn't let us put it back in that year.
Oh, do we got fish?
All right.
Just great.
Whoa. Good size. Oh, nice size.
Yeah, they're starting to run.
Okay. Wind your way down.
I brought my glove.
Get unstuck.
We'll let him go back. He's too small.
Couple of nice ones in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's like 3.
Another smaller one.
Good catch for today.
Oh,
Every family's got a little different version for their family dish that they like to do.
Made like kalakukko. There's a fish pie. That's what my mother made. It was excellent. And they kalokeito, they had a crust with it with potatoes also in it. That was a keito. And some people would make a moyaka with the livers and the eggs and the fish in the stew. It's a fish stew.
My favorite, of course, is fish soup. But burbot is also good deep fried. It makes a real good kalakukko also, which is like a pasty type of the thing where the crust is made out of rye dough, and it made into the pasty shape, and you put a layer of pork, layer of fish, layer of pork, layer of fish, and then they close it up and bake it in the oven for 7 hours so that all the bones of the fish are also so soft that you don't even notice it when you are eating it.
My favorite way is to put them in a frying pan with about an inch of water and kind of like poach them in that. Put a little butter on them, then put a little seasonings on them when you put them on your plate. Delicious.
I used to basically just bake them. And you put a little lemon, a few sauces on there, or spices on there, and then when they come out, it's just like, you wouldn't believe it. It's not fishy tasting at all. It's just unbelievable.
It's probably the best deep fried fish that there is that I've had. You know, it's just excellent.
When Grandma and Grandpa were living, when they used to get the fish, Grandma used to make a pot of galamoyaka. That's like a fish stew.
We'd get the net would be full. It was really hard to lift out. So we made a net. We used bigger mesh so the small ones can get out, and we only got the bigger ones because they had a lot of eggs and big livers, and those livers were really good.
And my dad made this soup, and I can still remember the terrible smell from this soup. And he gave us each a bowl of it. We were sitting at the table, and he told us we had to eat it. And we were all crying. And my mom says, you don't have to eat that. And I don't think my mother has ever told us that we didn't have to eat something.
Nobody wanted to wash that pot either. You'd carry it from Grandma's away from you because of the smell.
Yeah, Grandma Lempe would prepare it.
They enjoyed having their galamoyaka meal, but that was mainly meant for Grandpa. And some of the boys would eat it. But that was a holiday meal.
Oh, really?
So they'd have it just a couple of times during our Christmas time that Grandpa really looked forward to that. It was not a mainstay for them. It was considered a special meal. Mm-hmm. And they would have that just a couple of times.
Yeah.
But that was a big Christmas thing for them.
Yeah. After Lempe passed away, I guess that was kind of the end of the galamoyaka, I guess, right?
And being the typical Finn, you don't share the recipes.
Well, there wasn't one.
There wasn't one. You watched.
Yeah.
You watched what went in the pot, and same thing with baking.
Yeah.
Now when it gets down there, it should roll under the ice a little bit. There is getting to be less and less people doing it. We've tried to get some of the younger people into it, but when they have to leave the area to go for work, it's tough to find young people that are staying in the area and trying to pass it on to them, but I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can.
Our winters seem like they're getting milder. There's less ice on the river, and the thing was when ice starts forming is about the time now where the fish are coming up
to spawn, and
you've got all this slush coming down the river that'll fill up your net full of I hear slush. A lot of complaints about that it's hard to get the net out of the river. I had a net here for a couple of years, an old one I found, and it was a bear to pull it out of the river because it was so packed with that slush.
One thing that has changed greatly, I guess, over the years to presently now is you just don't get a lot of them anymore. You know, the numbers are, and I don't have the reason for this, I do not know. I mean, but there just aren't the numbers of burbot running anymore.
You'd have 100 at least in a net.
Oh yeah, it was amazing the runs that we'd have way back.
But it's just hard to find a good spot anymore.
Yeah.
It's all pretty much privately owned.
Yeah. In Finland, they have the every man's right, where you have a right to cross private property. You can pick berries on it. You can do different things as long as you don't intrude on people's privacy and stuff, you know. And that's pretty much the way it was around here. But now with the land being sold to non-Finns and lots of these traditions are being lost, even amongst those that weren't raised that way. They tend to put up the no trespassing signs and be protective of their land and stuff. So
I don't know, it seems like the culture is leaving a little bit, but there's still some Finn speakers here and there. So I try to speak as much as I can. Yeah, like my granddaughter, I try to teach her some, you know. Like the sauna song, there's a little sauna song. You ever heard that little sauna song? Kuksen sauna lämmittää, kuksen heittää löylyä. Isä lämmittää saunaa ja äiti heittää löylyä. Boy, this brings back memories. Haju hyvä. Smells good. Well, my mom used to make it. She would make fish pie or fish soup or kalakaito. So I learned from my mom just watching her. Oh yeah, well sometimes we'd come home and there would be a burlap bag of fish by the door, and this time of the year they would be mahteita, and then we would have to clean them up and we'd make a big meal with them. And then my friend Jussi Arikainen, he used to make a kalakaito, fish stew, and it was kind of funny because he'd leave the heads in there, and you open up the lid, there'd be an eyeball looking at you. But he said that with that fish head, he gave it better flavor. So that's why he wanted it in there. Jussi. Yeah, my left hand doesn't work so good anymore. I had nerve damage with that. See, these kind of fish you gotta skin like a catfish. I remember going on the Sturgeon River with Jussi, and this time of the year I'm going check the net, help pull the net, and just below Otter Lake he had a rusa. Tough to the end. We won't use the heads today. There's the liver.
That's the part I did not like of the meal. I wouldn't eat the livers. They were too rich for me. I ate the meat, which is just, it's like a walleye meat. It's very, very good meat. You know, and I ate the eggs. I like those. You know, but the liver part, I couldn't do that.
I don't even eat kalakokkoa. That's just a bread with fish and liver in it. If they didn't put the liver in there, I would eat it, but I've never even eaten it. I tried it once and I must have eaten a piece of liver. Milk.
If I could get maybe one or two of extra as well, yeah. I'd bring them for my neighbors. Especially this one guy. He's given me burbot before, and now he's had a stroke and he can't put a net in the river anymore. I bet you that one's got eggs. If it's got eggs, I'll pickle some eggs. We'll have some eggs and crackers. It's big in the belly. This is the time of year for spawning anyway, so. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh, there's got to be millions of little eggs there. So that's it.
Betty, my dad used to take the ones that had the fish eggs in them, he used to take and cut it open, and he'd put the fish eggs in a glass, and he'd put a raw egg in there with salt and pepper, and he'd put it in the fridge for a day. The next day he'd take and just eat the whole thing.
1 pound of burbot eggs was costing around $50 in Finland, around 1970.
My mom used to make homemade bread, and then we'd put the eggs in a bowl and put salt and pepper and onions and spread it like a spread on the bread. That was so good.
Roger's ma used to make homemade butter. Oh, it's just unbelievable how good that was. But anyways, you put bread, butter, metia, and then onions on there if you wanted to. Some ate it like applesauce.
Leonard, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, it's all.
They looked like applesauce. Some people made mistakes sometimes, and they did it once, you know.
Caviar.
Mm-hmm. Burbot eggs used to be taken to like St. Petersburg from Finland because all the rich people in St. Petersburg liked it so much that they would buy it too.
Good?
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Oh.
Then
Oh.
I'll turn this off. Okay, it's off.
And my father's are always salty. You taste salt. Here you just.
I don't like to put too much salt in. I got salt in here. Well, my dad, he'd work us, you know, for making winter's wood and gardening and pulling weeds and picking rocks and piling brush, and there was no end to it. But then he'd let me go fishing too, because he knew that I'd come home with fish most of the time, and I'd come home with stringers of fish, and there'd be suckers and walleye and northern and bass, and then we'd have that for supper, that fried fish. Oh man, really good. The Sturgeon River we used to go. It ain't all changed now. They put that dam in right where the rapids was, and there was that rapids there, and there was a huge pool below that rapids just loaded with fish, and we'd fish them with government poles. Government poles is a small branch from the woods growing straight, haruk, a forked branch. And then you put your line on the fork on that and then throw it in there with, and that's all we had for our fishing poles. And a little bit of onions. Oh yeah, we have to cut that green off. Greenies. I like this kind of pepper, this bigger pepper. Yeah, it's more, I think, more flavorful. How many fillets there? Oh, let's see. Oh, man. We'll have enough for two. Oh, man, my mouth is starting to water already. Yeah, I can't believe it. Where did that time go? I remember when I was a kid, I used to love to get up early in the morning. And there was, sitting under this one tree, birch tree, and that was where a wood pile was, and there was a stump there. And early in the morning, before anybody else got up, and I'd love to listen to the bird song. Oh man, that was just beautiful. Now we got to put a couple of holes in there. And when that bubbles, it's done. Kalakukko. Kalakukko. Fish pie.
My uncle Gordon Pezola, he actually, his father owned a IGA store in Elo. And back then they used to deliver food, like they talk nowadays about delivering groceries. That was going on already back in the teens. around here. The story I heard was that he got stuck in a snowstorm over at, I think it was Kalungi's place in Tapiola. And that's all he ate for a week was boyaka. He was pretty tired of it by the end of it.
Yeah, here they are. Haju hyvä. Oh yeah. Will you hit that liver?
Oh my God. It's really good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Becca.
So they seem to make it and, put the livers in there and I don't know. Tried to get them to eat it, but they won't, so oh well.
Yeah, your wife doesn't like the livers.
No, more for me. Yeah, it's really good. John Yussi could fix anything. He was my fishing partner. He'd come and talk to my dad in Finna that if Becca could come fishing. And in the later years, then I would take him. He'd hop in my car and we'd go. I'd go pick him up and we'd go. And he was 70. And I remember this. I said, John, boy, you're thankful that here you are, 70 years old, and you still can go out in a brook trout stream. Well, here I am, me. I'm approaching 70, and that's why I say I'm blessed, I have, good enough that I can get along and go brook trout fishing, yeah. I got everything enough, yeah. Family that loves me, and my kids, and enough to eat, wood in the stove, and warm bed, wife that cooks for me and loves me, and so, got it made.
Mm-hmm.